A gym trainer mocks an older man trying to work out, calling him old-timer and humiliating him in front of a packed crowd recording with their phones. The arrogant trainer issues a public challenge: 30 seconds in the ring to prove the old man doesn't belong in a real gym. But what this cocky bully doesn't realize is that the quiet stranger he's taunting is Donnie Yen himself. The legendary martial artist who spent decades perfecting the deadliest fighting techniques ever captured on film now stands face to face with a punk who thinks muscles and attitude make him tough. While gym members pull out their cameras expecting to see an old man get destroyed, they're about to witness a masterclass in why you never judge a warrior by his age. The trainer bounces around the ring showing off for his followers, but the martial arts icon remains perfectly still, hands at his sides, watching with the patience of a mountain. 30 seconds is all Donnie needs to turn this bully's world upside down without throwing a single punch. What happens when disrespect meets a living legend? Will the trainer survive learning that some men are dangerous precisely because they don't need to prove it? What happened next would leave the entire gym speechless for the rest of their lives. Before we jump back and tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus Kim finished adjusting the last foam pad on the community center mat, watching his Tuesday evening self-defense class file out into the Phoenix twilight. Mrs. Eleanor Hoffman lingered by the door, her weathered hands clutching her purse strap. "Thank you again, Mr. Kim," she said, her voice carrying genuine gratitude. "I actually felt confident walking to the grocery store yesterday. First time in months, I didn't look over my shoulder every few steps." Marcus smiled, the expression creasing the corners of his dark eyes. "Balance comes from within, Mrs. Hoffman. The techniques are just tools." He watched her walk toward her grandson's waiting car, noting how she carried herself with new dignity. The community center's fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Marcus packed his simple gym bag. His movements were precise, economical, each item placed with the same attention he'd shown when demonstrating pressure points to his elderly students. A thermos of green tea, hand wraps worn soft from years of use, a small notebook filled with sketches of defensive positions tailored for arthritic joints. Other instructors had offered to grab dinner, share war stories from their various martial arts backgrounds. Marcus politely declined, as always. He drove his modest Honda Civic through downtown Phoenix, past neon-lit restaurants and movie theaters displaying larger-than-life action heroes on their marquees. One poster showed a familiar face executing a perfect spinning kick, but Marcus's expression never changed. He pulled into the parking lot of Iron Wolf Fitness, studying the gleaming facility through his windshield. The contrast struck him immediately. This wasn't the humble community center with its scratched mirrors and donated equipment. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, he saw bodies sculpted like marble, moving with the confidence that came from aesthetic perfection rather than practical application. The membership card felt foreign in his weathered hands, a gift from his landlord's son who'd insisted the old teacher needed better equipment. Marcus had accepted graciously, though he suspected his training methods would seem antiquated in such a place. The bass-heavy music hit him like a physical force as he pushed through the glass doors. Chrome and mirrors reflected images of youth and strength, of people who had never needed to defend anything more precious than their personal records. A young receptionist barely glanced up from her phone, waving him through with the casual dismissal reserved for the unremarkable. Marcus paused, his senses automatically cataloging exits, sight lines, potential threats. Old habits from a life he'd left behind, but instincts that had kept him alive when survival depended on reading a room in seconds. Marcus approached the free weight section with unhurried precision, his movements carrying a fluid grace that seemed oddly out of place among the aggressive grunting and clanging metal. He began with gentle stretches, each motion flowing into the next like water finding its natural course. A few nearby gym-goers glanced over, unable to articulate why this unassuming middle-aged man commanded their attention. Jake Brennan noticed him immediately. At 28, Jake had built his reputation on being the gym's alpha presence, perfectly. Sculpted muscles stretching his designer tank top, bleached hair styled with excessive gel, tribal tattoos covering his arms like badges of manufactured toughness. He moved with performative swagger, always aware of his audience. "Hey, Pops," Jake's voice carried across the weight area, deliberately loud enough to turn heads. "You're gonna hurt yourself doing it that way." Marcus looked up from the cable machine, his dark eyes calm and patient. "I'm fine, thank you." But Jake was already in motion, his regular followers gravitating toward potential entertainment like sharks sensing blood. Phone cameras appeared as if by magic, the modern reflex of a generation that documented everything. Nah, let me help you out here," Jake insisted, his tone dripping with condescension. He positioned himself beside Marcus, demonstrating what he considered proper form with exaggerated movements. "See, at your age, you gotta be real careful. This isn't some senior center with those little pink weights." The small crowd chuckled, emboldened by Jake's performance. Marcus stepped aside with quiet courtesy, allowing Jake to continue his display. The younger man's muscles strained theatrically, as he demonstrated technique that prioritized appearance over efficiency. "The key is power, old man," Jake continued, breathing heavily from his showboating. "Pure, raw strength. That's what separates the real athletes from them." He gestured dismissively at Marcus's modest frame. "Your form could cause rotator cuff injury," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying no judgment, only gentle observation born from experience. The comment hit Jake like a slap. His followers stopped laughing, sensing the shift in dynamics. Someone who looked like this unassuming teacher had no right to critique someone who looked like Jake Brennan. "Excuse me." Jake's voice rose, his face flushing red beneath his artificial tan. Marcus simply nodded toward Jake's shoulder position. "The angle creates unnecessary stress on the joint. I've seen many injuries from." "Listen here, Grandpa." Jake stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper that still carried to the growing crowd. "I've been training since before you probably even heard of a gym. Maybe you should stick to whatever geriatric exercises they taught you at the Y." Marcus remained perfectly still, his eyes holding depths that Jake couldn't begin to fathom. Jake's harassment intensified like a storm gathering strength. Having tasted blood in the water, he began following Marcus around the gym, his entourage trailing behind with phones ready to capture every moment of what they assumed would be an old man's humiliation. "Oh, look at this," Jake announced as Marcus moved to the rowing machine. "Pops thinks he's going to do some cardio. Better take it easy there. Wouldn't want to throw out your back." The laughter from his followers felt forced now, but they maintained their roles as an appreciative audience. Marcus began his rowing routine with measured strokes, his form textbook perfect. Each pull engaged his entire core, his breathing controlled and rhythmic. It was the form of someone who understood the machine's purpose rather than simply its operation. Jake positioned himself directly in front of the rowing machine, performing increasingly elaborate exercises designed to showcase his superior strength. He grabbed heavier weights than necessary, his movements becoming more dangerous as he sought to prove his dominance. The barbell curls grew wilder, his back arching as he sacrificed form for impressive numbers. "See that technique, old-timer?" Jake grunted between reps. "That's what 20 years of serious training looks like. Not whatever they're teaching in those community center karate classes." Marcus finished his set and moved to adjust the weight. "Stack. Your lower back is compensating," he said quietly, his tone carrying no mockery, only genuine concern. "That loading pattern will cause injury if you continue." The observation, delivered with such calm certainty, struck Jake like a physical blow. His followers exchanged glances, their phones still recording but their expressions uncertain. This wasn't going according to script. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Jake slammed the barbell down, the crash echoing through the gym. Other members stopped their workouts, sensing confrontation brewing. "Someone who's seen that injury before," Marcus replied simply. From her office window above the gym floor, Patricia Walsh watched the interaction with growing unease. She recognized the dangerous dynamic developing, Jake's fragile ego colliding with someone who refused to be intimidated. Jake brought in significant revenue through personal training clients, but this situation felt like it was spiraling beyond normal gym politics. She should intervene, Patricia knew. But Jake's clients paid premium rates, and the gym's mortgage payment was due next week. She made a mental note to speak with Jake later. Not realizing how quickly events would move beyond anyone's control, Jake's face had turned an alarming shade of red, his perfectly groomed appearance beginning to crack under the strain of public contradiction. You know what, old man? Jake's voice carried across the entire gym now. I think it's time someone taught you exactly where you belong. Jake's followers formed a loose circle around him, their phones now openly recording as the situation escalated beyond casual harassment into something more significant. The broader gym membership began to take notice, workouts pausing as people sensed the shift in atmosphere. Here's what's going to happen, Jake announced, his voice carrying the false confidence of someone who'd never faced real consequences. We're going to settle this right now, in the ring. He gestured toward the gym's small boxing area, normally used for cardio classes and light sparring. Marcus continued toweling sweat from his hands, his movements unhurried despite the growing crowd. That's not necessary. Oh, but I think it is. Jake's grin was predatory now, feeding off the attention. See, you came into my gym, criticized my technique, acted like you know something I don't. Time to put your money where your mouth is. The challenge hung in the air like smoke. More gym members gravitated toward the disturbance, drawn by the primal magnetism of potential conflict. Someone mentioned live streaming. Others debated whether to call management. 30 seconds. Jake continued, warming to his theme. You last 30 seconds in that ring with me, and I'll publicly apologize for any misunderstanding. But when you can't, and you won't, you never come back here. And you publicly admit that you were wrong to question someone who actually knows what they're doing. The crowd buzzed with nervous energy. This felt different from typical gym posturing, more serious, with real stakes attached. Marcus looked up from his towel, studying Jake's face with quiet intensity. And if I do last 30 seconds? Jake's laugh was harsh. Trust me, Grandpa, that's not going to be a problem. In the corner of the gym, Bobby Garrison had stopped his own workout. Entirely. Something about the older man's bearing triggered recognition in the retired detective's mind. The way he moved, the stillness that suggested coiled energy rather than frailty, the controlled breathing of someone accustomed to managing adrenaline. Marcus folded his towel with deliberate care and placed it on the bench. 30 seconds, he said simply. The crowd's excitement peaked as Jake punched the air triumphantly. Phone cameras angled for better shots as people jockeyed for position. This would be social media gold, the cocky trainer putting an arrogant old man in his place. But Bobby Garrison felt a chill of recognition as he watched Marcus Kim walk toward the boxing ring. The man's gait, the set of his shoulders, the way his eyes surveyed the space with tactical awareness. Bobby had spent 30 years reading people, and everything about this unassuming teacher suggested depths that Jake Brennan couldn't begin to comprehend. The boxing ring felt smaller with the crowd pressed against its edges, phones held high like torches at a medieval spectacle. Jake bounced on his toes, shadow boxing for his audience, throwing flashy combinations that drew appreciative murmurs from his followers. Marcus stood in the center, perfectly still. His hands remained at his sides, his breathing steady and controlled. The contrast was striking, kinetic energy versus absolute calm. Time starts now. Someone shouted from the crowd. Jake launched forward with a wild haymaker, expecting quick victory. Instead, Marcus moved like water, his body shifting just enough to let the punch slip past his shoulder. Jake stumbled slightly, thrown off by hitting nothing but air. The second attack came faster, a combination Jake had practiced countless times in the mirror. But Marcus seemed to anticipate each strike before it began, his movements economical and precise. He didn't block so much as redirect, using Jake's own momentum against him. Wing Chun principles flowed through Marcus's responses like breathing, centerline theory, simultaneous attack and defense, the concept of borrowing force. Each technique was invisible to untrained eyes but devastating in its efficiency. Jake grew frustrated, his attacks becoming wilder. The crowd's cheering gradually died as they realized they weren't watching the expected beatdown. Instead, they were witnessing something that looked almost choreographed in its beauty. Marcus never threw a single strike. His hands moved in small circles, deflecting and trapping, making Jake look clumsy without embarrassing him. It was the gentlest possible demonstration of superior skill, a master's lesson delivered through movement rather than violence. Exactly 30 seconds. Marcus stepped back and bowed respectfully. The gym fell absolutely silent. Jake stood in the center of the ring, breathing heavily, sweat staining his designer tank top. He'd thrown perhaps 20 punches and landed none. While his opponent had barely seemed to exert himself, Marcus began removing the borrowed gloves with the same careful attention he'd shown packing his gym bag. The crowd parted as he walked toward the edge of the ring, their expressions ranging from confusion to awe. "Thank you for the lesson," Marcus said quietly, his words carrying to every corner of the silent gym. He gathered his towel and water bottle, nodded politely to the stunned faces watching him, and walked toward the exit with unhurried dignity. The Phoenix evening air felt cool against Marcus's skin as he crossed the parking lot toward his Honda Civic. Behind him, the gym's windows glowed with activity. People still clustered around the ring area, their animated conversations and gestures suggesting heated debate about what they'd witnessed. "Excuse me." Marcus paused, his hand on the car door handle. The voice belonged to an older man approaching with careful respect rather than confrontation. "You're Donnie Yen, aren't you?" The recognition hit Marcus like a gentle wave rather than a shock. He'd been expecting this moment for 3 years, knowing that eventually someone would see past his carefully constructed anonymity. Bobby Garrison stepped into the light cast by the parking lot's overhead lamps. His weathered face carried the lines of someone who'd spent decades reading people, and his eyes held genuine admiration rather than celebrity worship. "I'm just a teacher now, my friend," Marcus replied, his voice carrying quiet acceptance. "I know who you are," Bobby continued, extending his hand. "Bobby Garrison, retired Phoenix PD. I've been watching your movies since I was a rookie cop dealing with street fights and domestic violence calls. Your films, they taught me something about discipline, about using violence only when absolutely necessary." Marcus shook the offered hand, recognizing a kindred spirit in Bobby's steady gaze. "Wing Chun saved my career more than once," Bobby said. "Not the fighting techniques, though those helped, but the philosophy. The idea that true strength comes from control, from knowing when not to fight." He gestured back toward the gym. "What I just watched in there, that was a master class in restraint." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, two men who understood the weight of experience. "That young trainer," Bobby said finally. "Men like Jake don't forget being shown up, especially not publicly. His type tends to escalate rather than learn from humiliation." Marcus nodded, understanding the warning. "I hoped a gentle lesson might be enough." "Maybe it will be," Bobby said, though his tone suggested doubt. "But in my experience, bullies who get embarrassed in front of their followers either learn humility or double down on stupid." Marcus considered this as he opened his car door. "Thank you for the warning, Detective. Just Bobby now. And Mr. Yen, I meant what I said about your films. They meant something to people like me." Marcus smiled genuinely for the first time that evening. Then they served their purpose. Jake stormed through the gym's locker room, his face burning with humiliation that seemed to radiate from his skin like fever. The few remaining gym members who tried to approach him received only harsh dismissals as he grabbed his gear with shaking hands. In the privacy of the shower stall, Jake pulled out his phone and scrolled through the videos already posted to social media. Dozens of angles captured his failure, each one showing him flailing uselessly while the old man moved with impossible grace. His first call went to Tommy Ricci. "Jake, what's up? You sound like shit. I need to talk to Vince. Tonight." "Romano? Jesus, Jake, what kind of trouble are you in now?" Jake's gambling debts had been mounting for months. Bad bets on underground fights, worse decisions at poker, games run by people who didn't accept IOUs. Vincent Romano controlled most of the illegal fighting circuit in Phoenix, and Jake had been walking a tightrope between usefulness and liability. "Just set up the meeting, Tommy. I might have something he'll want to hear about." 20 minutes later, Jake sat across from Vince Romano in the back office of Salvage Auto Repair. The shop's legitimate business provided perfect cover for Romano's actual operations, and the soundproofing meant private conversations stayed private. "You look like someone pissed in your protein shake," Romano observed, studying Jake with calculating eyes. "What's this about?" Jake's hands shook slightly as he pulled up the gym videos on his phone. "There's this old guy at Iron Wolf Fitness. Asian, maybe 50-something. He just made me look like an amateur in front of 30 people." Romano's expression didn't change as he watched the footage. "So some senior citizen embarrassed you. How is this my problem? Look at how he moves, Vince. Really look at it." Romano replayed the video, his attention focusing on Marcus's fluid defensive work. His eyes narrowed as he began to recognize what Jake had missed. This wasn't luck or accident. This was the movement of someone with serious training. "Send me these videos," Romano said quietly. "All of them." Jake's relief was palpable. "I was thinking we could use him. Set up some fights, make real money off. Shut up and let me think." Romano's mind was already working, calculating possibilities and profit margins. "You know anything else about this guy? Name, background, where he lives?" "Goes by Marcus Kim. That's all I got so far." Romano nodded slowly. "Get me more. Everything you can find." Romano's office felt different after midnight. Shadows deeper, sounds muffled by the industrial darkness surrounding the auto shop. Tommy Ricci hunched over a laptop, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he dove deeper into social media searches and facial recognition software available through Romano's law enforcement contacts. "Got something," Tommy announced, his voice tight with excitement. "This Marcus Kim, his face matches someone else entirely." Romano leaned over Tommy's shoulder, studying the split screen showing gym footage alongside professional headshots from entertainment databases. "Holy shit," Romano whispered. "That's Donnie Yen." The implications hit him immediately. Not just any martial artist, but a legitimate international action star with decades of film experience and real fighting credentials. The kind of name that would draw massive betting interest from collectors and criminals worldwide. "Boss, if we could get him into our circuit." Tommy's imagination was already running wild with profit calculations. "Slow down," Romano cautioned, though his own excitement was building. "Guy like this doesn't just stumble into underground fights. He's got reasons for keeping a low profile." Romano's phone rang. Patricia Walsh's number appeared on the caller ID. "Ms. Walsh. Working late tonight." Patricia's voice was strained, frightened. "Mr. Romano, I got your message about insurance coverage for the gym. I think there might be some misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding at all." Romano's tone remained pleasant, conversational. "Businesses like yours face all kinds of risks. Equipment failures, accidents, problems with difficult customers. Smart owners invest in protection." The line went quiet except for Patricia's shallow breathing. "I'll have someone stop by tomorrow to discuss your specific needs," Romano continued. "Nothing to worry about. Just a friendly consultation about keeping your business safe." After ending the call, Romano turned back to the laptop screen showing Donnie's filmography, dozens of action movies, martial arts demonstrations, interviews discussing real training and philosophy. "Tommy, I want surveillance on this Marcus Kim starting tomorrow. Where he lives, where he goes, who he talks to. And get Jake back in here. I want him to maintain contact, act friendly, maybe invite the guy to some kind of special training session." Romano's smile grew wider as possibilities multiplied in his mind. A legendary martial artist hiding in plain sight, operating without protection or backup. The betting potential alone would be worth millions, but the real value lay in exclusivity. No one else knew what Jake had stumbled onto. Across town, Donnie sat in meditation posture on his apartment's small balcony, breathing deeply as he processed the evening's events. His senses, still sharp after decades of training, detected the surveillance vehicle parked across the street. The quiet life he built was about to become very complicated. Donnie arrived at Iron Wolf Fitness the next morning expecting routine, his usual cardio circuit, some lightweight training, perhaps a polite nod to fellow gym members going about their Wednesday routines. Instead, he found controlled chaos. The gym buzzed with unusual energy. Unfamiliar faces mingled among regular members. Their clothes wrong for working out. Too nice, too formal, movements too alert. Patricia Walsh intercepted him near the entrance, her smile bright, but her eyes carrying unmistakable strain. "Marcus." Perfect timing. Her voice pitched higher than normal. "We're having a special event today, a martial arts demonstration that could be really good for business exposure." Donnie's experienced gaze swept the room, cataloging details his conscious mind processed instantly. Exit positions blocked by strategically placed equipment. Conversations that stopped when he appeared. The quality of attention he received, predatory rather than curious. Jake approached with manufactured enthusiasm, his earlier humiliation replaced by calculated friendliness. "Hey there, Marcus. No hard feelings about yesterday, right? Actually, that little sparring session got me thinking. You've got some serious skills that people should see. I prefer to keep my training private, Donnie replied quietly. Come on, don't be modest. Jake's tone grew more insistent. We've got some amateur MMA fighters here who'd love to learn from your traditional techniques. Nothing serious, just a friendly demonstration for the crowd. Patricia nodded too eagerly. It would really help the gym's reputation. Show that we welcome all training styles, all experience levels. Donnie's eyes found Patricia's, reading the fear beneath her forced enthusiasm. Whatever was happening here, she was as trapped as he was. His gaze swept the crowd again, noting how certain individuals positioned themselves near exits, their attention focused entirely on him rather than the supposed demonstration point. 3 young men entered the gym's ring area, introducing themselves as local MMA fighters interested in cross-training opportunities. Their movements carried the loose confidence of people accustomed to winning, but their eyes held something harder, the calculating look of men who fought for money rather than sport. What do you say, Marcus? Jake pressed. Just a few friendly techniques. Show these guys what traditional martial arts can do. Donnie understood with crystalline clarity that refusing would endanger Patricia and potentially other innocent gym members. Whatever trap had been set, he was already caught in it. A few minutes, he agreed quietly. The demonstration began with deceptive casualness. The 3 MMA fighters, who introduced themselves as Ryan, Carlos, and Brett, stretched and moved with the easy confidence of men accustomed to dominating physical confrontations. The growing crowd pressed closer, phones appearing despite Jake's earlier requests for privacy during training. So, Ryan said, bouncing lightly on his toes, we heard you do some kind of kung fu. Mind showing us how that works against real fighting? Donnie recognized the setup immediately. This wasn't exhibition, it was evaluation. These men had been instructed to test his capabilities, to push him far enough to reveal his true skill level without making their intent obvious to casual observers. Traditional techniques focus on efficiency, Donnie replied calmly, stepping into the ring area. Economy of motion, precise targeting. Carlos laughed. Sounds fancy. Let's see how it holds up. The attack came without further warning. All 3 men moving simultaneously with practiced coordination. This was their specialty, overwhelming opponents through numbers and aggression, the kind of tactics that worked in street fights and illegal competitions. But Donnie had spent decades training for exactly this scenario. Wing Chun's centerline theory guided his initial response, his body turning to minimize target area while his hands moved in small, precise circles. The first attacker's punch slipped past his shoulder. The second found only empty air where Donnie's head had been. What followed was poetry written in motion. Each defensive technique flowed seamlessly into the next. Pak Sao redirecting force, Lop Sao controlling distance, Chi Sao maintaining contact and advantage. Donnie never moved more than necessary, never used more force than required. But his economy of motion made the 3 younger men look clumsy by comparison. Ryan attempted a takedown, dropping low to grab Donnie's legs. Instead, he found himself redirected into Carlos, their collision opening space that Donnie used to step behind Brett's wild haymaker. A gentle push sent Brett stumbling into his recovering teammates. The crowd's initial excitement gradually transformed into awed silence. They'd expected to see an old man overwhelmed by younger, stronger opponents. Instead, they witnessed something that resembled a master class in defensive fighting. Technique so refined it appeared effortless. After 90 seconds, all 3 fighters stood breathing heavily while Donnie remained calm and centered, barely showing exertion. He'd controlled the entire encounter without delivering a single aggressive strike, demonstrating complete mastery through pure defensive skill. Jake stared from the sidelines, his expression mixing awe with growing excitement as he realized what Romano's organization had stumbled onto. Before Donnie could step out of the ring area, slow clapping echoed through the suddenly quiet gym. The crowd parted as Vincent Romano emerged from where he'd been watching near the equipment racks, his expensive suit and cold smile immediately shifting the atmosphere from athletic to dangerous. That was impressive, Mr. Yen, Romano said, dropping any pretense about Donnie's hidden identity. Very impressive indeed. The use of his real name sent ripples through the crowd. Phones that had been recording surreptitiously now focused with new intensity as people realized they'd witnessed something far more significant than a simple gym demonstration. "I'm Vincent Romano," he continued, approaching with the confidence of someone accustomed to having his name recognized. "I run certain entertainment enterprises here in Phoenix. Enterprises that could benefit greatly from someone with your particular talents." Donnie remained silent, but his posture shifted almost imperceptibly. Weight balanced, breathing controlled, ready. "Here's the situation." Romano's voice carried clearly to every corner of the gym. "You're going to participate in some special exhibitions I organize. Private events for discerning audiences who appreciate genuine martial arts skill." "I'm not interested," Donnie replied simply, that Romano's smile never wavered. "I think you misunderstand. This isn't really a request." He gestured casually, and several of his men stepped forward from their positions throughout the gym. "You see, accidents happen in businesses like this. Equipment failures, insurance problems. And Ms. Walsh here has worked so hard to build this place." Patricia's face went pale as the threat became explicit. "Then there's that community center where you teach," Romano continued conversationally. "Lots of elderly students, I'm told. People who might have trouble defending themselves if dangerous individuals decided to visit their classes." The mention of his students, Mrs. Hoffman and the other seniors who depended on him, hit Donnie like a physical blow. Romano had done his research thoroughly, identifying exactly which pressure points would ensure compliance. "And Detective Bobby Garrison," Romano added. "Retired cops sometimes have accidents too, especially ones who ask too many questions about things that don't concern them." Donnie's jaw tightened. Every person he cared about, everyone who had shown him kindness in his quiet new life, was being threatened because of who he used to be. "One fight," Donnie said quietly. "One exhibition, and this ends." Romano's laughter was genuinely amused. "Oh, Mr. Yen, one fight is just the beginning. But don't worry, I think you're going to find this arrangement very educational." The crowd began dispersing as Romano's men moved to escort Donnie from the gym, leaving Patricia Walsh standing alone in her business. Finally understanding what she'd allowed to unfold, the converted warehouse squatted in Phoenix's industrial district like a sleeping beast, its exterior deliberately nondescript, while luxury vehicles filled the hidden parking areas behind razor wire fencing. Donnie studied the building through tinted windows as Romano's sedan approached, noting security cameras, armed guards, and the kind of professional setup that suggested significant financial investment. Inside, the transformation was startling. What had once been storage space now resembled a high-end nightclub crossed with a professional boxing venue. Tiered seating surrounded a regulation-sized ring, professional lighting cast dramatic shadows, and a well-stocked bar served patrons who clearly had money to burn on illegal entertainment. The crowd was a dangerous mixture: organized crime figures in expensive suits, wealthy thrill-seekers seeking forbidden excitement, and gambling addicts drawn by the promise of insider information on fixed fights. The air thrummed with the energy of people gathered to witness violence as entertainment. "Welcome to the real show," Romano said, leading Donnie through the crowd like a proud owner displaying prized livestock. "This is where serious money changes hands, where people with refined tastes come to see authentic combat." Donnie's opponent waited in the ring with the patient stillness of a predator. Carl, the butcher, Dietrich, stood 6'4" and weighed nearly 300 pounds, his massive frame covered in scars that told stories of countless violent encounters. His reputation preceded him, an enforcer for Romano's organization who had never lost a fight in this venue. "Dietrich specializes in ending fights quickly," Romano explained conversationally. "Usually within the first minute, rarely gently. The crowd loves him because he delivers guaranteed brutality." As Donnie stepped into the ring, the crowd's energy intensified. Money changed hands rapidly as bets were placed, with most odds heavily favoring the younger, larger man. Shouts in multiple languages indicated international interest in the outcome. The fight began with explosive violence as Dietrich charged forward, using his size advantage to try overwhelming his opponent immediately. But Donnie had faced larger opponents throughout his career, in films that required real skill, in training that demanded authentic technique. Wing Chun principles guided his defense: centerline control, simultaneous attack and defense, borrowing force from his opponents. Aggression. Dietrich's power was immense, but power without precision created opportunities for someone with superior technique and timing. The battle lasted 8 grueling minutes, a chess match played with fists and feet, strategy versus strength, experience versus youth. Donnie's victory came through submission rather than knockout, using joint locks and pressure points to render Dietrich unconscious without permanent injury. The crowd erupted as Romano collected a fortune in winning bets, his investment in acquiring Donnie already paying enormous dividends. But the celebration attracted unwanted attention as Anthony Castellano arrived with his entourage. Drawn by reports of extraordinary profit margins and a fighter unlike any other in Romano's stable, Anthony Castellano entered the warehouse like royalty surveying his domain, his entourage parting the crowd with subtle but unmistakable authority. At 63, he carried himself with the bearing of someone who had never doubted his right to command, his silver hair perfectly styled and his custom suit immaculate despite the warehouse's industrial setting. The entire atmosphere shifted as conversations died and lesser criminals stepped aside. Even Romano straightened his posture, the confident crime boss suddenly resembling a nervous middle manager reporting to corporate headquarters. Vincent, Castellano's voice carried the soft authority of someone who never needed to raise it. I heard about your new acquisition. Quite an investment return, from what I understand. Donnie stood in the ring, sweat cooling on his skin as he watched this new player assess him like livestock at auction. Everything about Castellano suggested a different level of criminal sophistication, someone who operated on an international scale rather than Romano's regional enterprises. Mr. Castellano, this is Donnie Yen, Romano said, his earlier confidence replaced by deferential eagerness. The genuine article, not some wannabe, but the actual martial arts legend. Castellanos' eyes never left Donnie as he circled the ring slowly. I know exactly who he is. The question is whether he understands his new situation. He stopped directly in front of Donnie, studying him with the intensity of a collector evaluating a rare artifact. I run entertainment enterprises across the Southwest, Castellano continued. High-stakes events for international clientele with sophisticated tastes and unlimited resources. A legendary martial artist competing in authentic combat scenarios. The betting potential alone would generate millions. I agreed to one fight. Donnie said quietly. Castellano's laugh held no warmth. One fight was Romano's small-scale thinking. I'm proposing something much more ambitious. A tournament featuring carefully selected opponents, marketed to collectors worldwide who would pay premium prices for exclusive access. When Donnie remained silent, Castellano's expression hardened. Perhaps you need motivation to appreciate this opportunity. He gestured to his men, who produced tablets showing surveillance footage. Patricia Walsh leaving her apartment. Mrs. Hoffman walking to grocery shopping. Bobby Garrison at a coffee shop, unaware of the cameras tracking his movements. Accidents happen so easily, Castellano said conversationally. Business fires, random muggings, elderly people falling down stairs. Such tragedies, but completely unpredictable. Donnie's hands clenched involuntarily as images of his students and friends filled the screens. 48 hours, Castellano announced. Consider my offer carefully. I'll expect your answer then. The diner on Phoenix's outskirts looked forgotten. By time, its faded chrome and cracked vinyl booths providing perfect anonymity for clandestine meetings. Bobby Garrison occupied a corner booth with clear sight lines to all entrances. His detective instincts never fully retired despite 3 years away from the badge. Donnie slid into the opposite seat, exhaustion evident in the careful way he moved. The previous night's fight had pushed his 52-year-old body harder than any recent training, reminding him that age remained undefeated against even legendary warriors. You look like hell, Bobby observed, pouring coffee from the pot there. Waitress had left behind. Castellano's operation is larger than we anticipated, Donnie replied quietly. International connections, serious money, and enough surveillance to know everything about everyone I care about. Bobby spread photographs across the table, surveillance. Shots of Romano's men, license plates from the warehouse district, faces captured through telephoto lenses during his careful investigation of the criminal network. Anthony Castellano, Bobby said, pointing to a clear photograph of the crime boss entering an upscale restaurant. Third-generation organized crime, family connections to East Coast syndicates, suspected of running everything from drug distribution to money laundering across Arizona, Nevada, and Southern California. Donnie studied the intelligence reports while Bobby continued his briefing. The underground fighting circuit is just one revenue stream, but it's grown exponentially in recent years. International betting, streaming rights to private collectors, even exhibitions for wealthy criminals who pay premium prices for exclusive entertainment. How many people does he control? Directly? Maybe 30 serious operators. But his influence extends much further through corruption, intimidation, and financial leverage. Bobby's expression darkened. Some of my former colleagues are on his payroll, which means official help is impossible. They sat in contemplative silence as the gravity of the situation settled between them. Castellano commanded resources that could reach anywhere, threaten anyone, destroy lives with casual efficiency. There might be another option, Bobby said. Finally, I've been in contact with federal agents building a RICO case against Castellano's organization. They need evidence of his criminal enterprises, financial records, recorded conversations, proof of the fighting circuit's scope. You're suggesting I become an informant. I'm suggesting you might be in a unique position to gather evidence that could bring down his entire operation. But it would require surviving long enough to collect that evidence. Donnie nodded slowly, understanding the implications. Infiltrating Castellano's tournament wouldn't just mean fighting for his life. It would mean becoming bait in a trap designed to catch much bigger prey. The abandoned airplane hangar stretched across acres of desert. Outside Phoenix, its cavernous interior transformed into an arena that rivaled any professional fighting venue. International broadcast equipment lined the walls, satellite dishes crowned the roof, and multiple camera angles captured every square foot of the elevated fighting platform. Donnie moved through the pre-fight preparation area, studying his opponents. As they went through their routines, the tournament featured fighters from across the globe. Alexei Volkov from Russia, a Sambo expert whose military background showed in his methodical preparation. Carlos Silva from Brazil, a jiu-jitsu master, whose ground game had dominated South American underground circuits. Eric Hansen from Germany, a kickboxer whose surgical precision had earned him legendary status in European criminal fighting leagues. Each man represented the pinnacle of their respective disciplines, handpicked by Castellano's international connections and flown in specifically for this exhibition. The betting pools reflected their reputations, millions of dollars wagered by criminal organizations worldwide, with odds constantly shifting as insider information circulated through encrypted communication networks. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer's voice boomed through the hangar's sound system. Tonight we present the most exclusive martial arts exhibition ever assembled, authentic masters of combat in unrestricted competition. The first fight paired Donnie against Volkov, the Russian's military training evident in his aggressive, straightforward approach. But Donnie's decades of experience with multiple fighting styles allowed him to adapt. Wing Chun's trapping techniques neutralized Volkov's attempted takedowns, while precise strikes to pressure points gradually wore down the larger man's stamina. Victory came after 6 minutes of intense combat, Donnie emerging bloodied but victorious while the crowd roared approval and millions of dollars changed hands. In the betting pools, the second fight, 30 minutes later, featured Silva's ground game expertise. The Brazilian attempted to take the fight to the floor where his jiu-jitsu skills would dominate, but Donnie's defensive footwork and striking accuracy kept the fight standing long enough to find opportunities for decisive attacks. By the evening's end, Donnie had defeated 4 opponents in succession, each victory pushing his aging body closer to its limits while the crowd's bloodlust intensified. Camera feeds streamed to private collectors worldwide, generating revenue that exceeded Castellano's most optimistic projections. But exhaustion was taking its toll. As the final opponent prepared to enter the ring, Donnie's movements showed the accumulated damage of hours of brutal combat against world-class fighters. The crowd sensed weakness, and their excitement reached a fever pitch. AS medical staff attended to his cuts and bruises between fights. Jake Brennan approached Donnie Yen, the makeshift preparation area. The gym trainer's expression mixed guilt with desperate greed. his earlier arrogance replaced by the haunted look of someone who had ventured far beyond his depth. "Listen, Marcus, Donnie, whatever," Jake's voice cracked slightly. "I need you to know, this got way bigger than I ever intended." Donnie remained silent, conserving energy while medics worked on a cut above his left eye. "I was just trying to make some quick money, pay off some debts," Jake continued, his confession spilling out in nervous bursts. But Romano, then Castellano, they turned this into something else entirely. "What are you telling me, Jake?" Jake glanced around nervously before pulling out a small recording device. "I've been filming everything, not just the fights, but the conversations, the money transfers, all of it. Castellano doesn't know about the hidden cameras I installed." Donnie's attention focused completely. "Why?" "Insurance, initially. Something to keep me alive if things went bad." Jake's hands shook as he showed Donnie the device. "But it's bigger now. International streaming rights, private collectors paying millions for exclusive footage, betting syndicates from 3 continents." The revelation hit Donnie like a physical blow. This tournament wasn't just about local criminal profits. It was being marketed globally as premium content featuring a genuine martial arts legend's potential destruction. Castellano sold the footage rights to everyone before the tournament even began, Jake continued. "Whether you win or lose, die or survive, he's already collected payment from buyers worldwide." Before Donnie could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the hangar complex. Police sirens wailed in the distance, but these weren't rescue vehicles, Romano's surveillance network had detected their approach, and the sirens belonged to officers on Castellano's payroll. "Nobody leaves until this is finished," Castellano's voice boomed through the sound system. "We have a show to complete." Armed men moved to seal the hangar's exits while Donnie realized the trap's true scope. Jake's betrayal had become irrelevant. They were all prisoners now in Castellano's final exhibition, and the crime boss intended to eliminate every witness who could testify about his international criminal enterprise. The hangar's main lights, dimmed as emergency illumination, cast everything in hellish red shadows. Outside, corrupt police officers established a perimeter designed not to rescue anyone inside, but to ensure no one escaped to tell their story. Donnie slumped against the medical table, exhaustion and dehydration finally taking their toll. As the full magnitude of their situation became clear, Donnie's eyes opened to concrete walls and the acrid smell of industrial cleaning chemicals. His hands were zip-tied behind his back, dried blood from the tournament fights pulling tight across split knuckles. The storage room's fluorescent bulbs hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across huddled figures pressed against metal shelving. "Units." Patricia Walsh sat near the door, her business clothes torn and her face streaked with tears she'd tried to hide. Mrs. Hoffman occupied a corner spot, her gray hair disheveled, but her posture remarkably straight for a 73-year-old woman who'd been kidnapped from her apartment at gunpoint. "Marcus," Patricia whispered when she noticed him stirring. "Thank God. We thought you might not wake up." 3 other community center students sat nearby, elderly people whose only crime had been learning self-defense from someone who tried to live quietly. Their frightened faces showed the cost of Donnie's past catching up to innocent lives. "How long have we been here?" Donnie's voice came out rougher than expected. 6 hours, maybe 7, Mrs. Hoffman replied with surprising steadiness. "They've been talking outside. Something about selling footage internationally and eliminating witnesses." Donnie tested his restraints carefully, feeling for weak points in the plastic ties. Years of film work involving authentic escape scenarios had taught him that most restraints could be defeated with proper technique and patience. "Listen to me," he said quietly, drawing everyone's attention. "When I give the signal, Mrs. Hoffman leads everyone to that ventilation grate in the corner. Patricia, you help the others move quietly." "What about you?" Patricia asked. "I'll create the opportunity you need." Donnie's voice carried calm certainty that somehow steadied everyone's nerves. "Mrs. Hoffman, remember what we practiced about. Breathing under stress." The elderly woman actually smiled slightly. "Breathe from the diaphragm. Maintain awareness, trust in preparation." "Exactly." As Donnie worked methodically on his restraints, Mrs. Hoffman began quietly instructing the other hostages in basic movement techniques: how to step silently, how to control their breathing, how to move as a group without creating noise. The storage room became an impromptu classroom as Donnie's teaching philosophy took hold among his students. Fear remained, but it was now channeled into purposeful preparation rather than paralyzing panic. Outside the door, guards' voices carried discussions about disposal methods and cleanup procedures, unaware that their prisoners were transforming from victims into something more dangerous. Working his zip ties against a sharp edge of metal shelving, Donnie found meditation in the repetitive motion. Each careful stroke brought him closer to freedom, while his mind achieved the clarity that had always preceded his most important battles. 3 years of hiding from his identity had been its own form of prison, he realized. The humble teacher and the legendary warrior weren't separate entities. They were aspects of the same person, each incomplete without the other. "Mr. Kim," Mrs. Hoffman whispered, "you're not just a community center instructor, are you?" Donnie paused in his work, meeting her knowing gaze. "What makes you ask that?" "The way you move. The way you see things others miss. The fact that dangerous people went to extraordinary lengths to capture you." Her weathered hands gestured to their surroundings. "This isn't about a gym trainer's wounded pride anymore." "No," Donnie admitted quietly. "It isn't." Patricia leaned closer. "Those movies playing at the theater downtown, the martial arts films with the actor who looks like you. That's actually you, isn't it?" The plastic ties finally parted under Donnie's patient work. He rubbed circulation back into his wrists while considering how much to reveal. "My name is Donnie Yen," he said simply. "I spent decades making films, but I came to Phoenix seeking something more meaningful than entertainment." Mrs. Hoffman's expression showed understanding rather than surprise. "You found it teaching us. You all gave me purpose I didn't know I was missing," Donnie replied, genuine emotion coloring his voice. "You showed me that strength has value beyond performance, that teaching matters more than fame." He moved to the storage room door, listening carefully to conversations outside. Two guards discussed shift changes, their voices growing more distant as they moved down the corridor. "Mrs. Hoffman," Donnie said, "when we taught you about courage, what did we learn?" "That courage isn't the absence of fear," she replied immediately. "It's acting properly despite fear." "Exactly." Donnie tested the door handle carefully. "Everyone ready?" The group nodded, terror and determination warring in their expressions. Patricia helped the older students to their feet, while Mrs. Hoffman positioned herself near the ventilation grate Donnie had identified. "Remember," Donnie said, "I'm not just your teacher anymore. Tonight, I'm exactly who I need to be to get you home safely." His hand found the door handle as purpose crystallized within him. The legendary warrior and the humble teacher merged into a single, focused entity prepared for what must come. The corridor outside their prison stretched through the warehouse's administrative section, fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows between stacks of equipment and abandoned office furniture. Donnie moved like smoke through the spaces, each step calculated to avoid detection while his senses mapped the building's layout from memory and sound. The first guard never saw him coming. A precise strike to the carotid artery dropped the man silently, his unconscious body lowered carefully to avoid noise. Donnie relieved him of zip tie restraints and a radio, valuable intelligence about security positions crackling through the static. "Sector 7, report status," a voice demanded through the radio. Donnie keyed the microphone, pitching his voice low and adding fatigue that would mask any accent differences. "All quiet here." Wing Chun principles guided his movement through the warehouse maze. Centerline theory helping him navigate tight spaces, sticky hands techniques allowing him to feel his way through darkened areas, breathing control maintaining silence despite elevated heart rate. The second guard posed a greater challenge, positioned at a junction where multiple corridors met. But decades of film choreography had taught Donnie to use environment creatively. A carefully thrown bolt drew the guard's attention while Donnie approached from his blind side, joint locks and pressure points rendering him unconscious without struggle. Each neutralized threat brought new intelligence. Radio chatter revealed guard positions, shift schedules, and most importantly, the location where hostages were being held separately from his own group. Castellano had scattered prisoners throughout the building to prevent coordinated escape attempts. The third guard carried a sidearm, raising stakes considerably. But Donnie's approach remained consistent. Patience, precision, control. A trash can lid became a shield, broken furniture provided distraction, and superior positioning allowed him to disarm the threat without lethal force. From the shadows, he observed the main hangar, where Castellano coordinated cleanup operations. Bodies from the tournament had been removed, evidence systematically destroyed, and escape routes prepared for the crime boss's departure. But the radio traffic also revealed something else. Bobby Garrison and federal agents had surrounded the building's perimeter. Not corrupt local police, but legitimate law enforcement building their RICO case against Castellano's organization. The warehouse had become a trap, but now Donnie wasn't certain who was the prey and who was the hunter. Outside, Bobby's voice crackled through law enforcement frequencies, coordinating a careful approach designed to preserve evidence while rescuing hostages. Inside, Donnie continued his methodical progression toward the main hangar, each step bringing him closer to the final confrontation with Castellano's remaining forces. The main hangar felt like a cathedral of violence, its soaring ceiling lost in shadows while industrial lighting illuminated the elevated platform where Donnie had fought for others' entertainment hours earlier. Now Castellano commanded the space like a general directing retreat, his remaining dozen men positioned strategically around equipment and barriers. Jake Brennan cowered near a support pillar, his earlier bravado completely evaporated as he realized the magnitude of what his greed had unleashed. Patricia Walsh and several other hostages knelt on the platform under armed guard, their presence ensuring Castellano's temporary safety from outside law enforcement. Mr. Yen. Castellano's voice carried clearly across the space. I know you're here. My men found the guards you left unconscious. Very professional work, by the way. No unnecessary killing, precise technique. Admirable restraint. Donnie emerged from the shadows near the hangar's eastern wall, his movements deliberate and unhurried. Every eye in the building focused on him as he walked toward the central platform. Your federal friends have surrounded us, Castellano continued, conversationally. Quite a comprehensive operation they've mounted. But as you can see, I have insurance against any aggressive action on their part. He gestured toward the hostages, their terrified faces highlighting the deadly chess game now in progress. Here's what's going to happen, Castellano announced. You're going to help me leave this building safely. In exchange, these innocent people live to see morning. Donnie stopped 20 feet from the platform, studying angles and distances with tactical awareness honed through decades of staged combat that required real timing and precision. Or, he said quietly, you could release them and face me directly. Castellanos. Laughter echoed through the hangar. Face you? Mr. Yen, I think you misunderstand the situation. I'm not some amateur fighter looking to test himself against a legend. I'm a businessman who uses violence as a tool, not an art form. Then you've already lost, Donnie replied. The crime boss's expression hardened as he drew a pistol, pointing it directly at Patricia Walsh's head. One more step and she dies. Then the next hostage. Then the next, until you decide cooperation serves everyone's interests better than heroics. Donnie froze, calculating probabilities and physics. Even his legendary speed couldn't overcome the simple mechanics of trigger pressure and bullet velocity across such short distance. The standoff stretched taut as federal agents outside coordinated their approach. Castellano's men maintained their positions, and innocent lives hung in the balance of decisions made by people trained to think of human beings as expendable resources. The tension crystallized into explosive action when Jake Brennan, driven by desperate guilt and self-preservation, lunged at Castellano from behind. His timing was perfect, his execution flawed. The crime boss easily sidestepped Jake's clumsy tackle and backhanded him across the platform. Pathetic, Castellano snarled, swinging his pistol toward Jake's crumpled form. You created this situation with your incompetence, and now you want to play hero? The moment of distraction was exactly what Donnie had been waiting for. He moved with explosive precision, covering the 20 feet to the platform in seconds, while Castellano's attention focused on Jake. But the crime boss recovered quickly, spinning the weapon back toward the hostages. Stop right there. Castellano's voice cracked with strain. I'll kill them all. Jake struggled to his feet, blood streaming from his nose, but determination replacing his earlier cowardice. No more, he gasped. I'm done being scared of you. What followed was a three-way confrontation that embodied different philosophies of strength. Castellano represented power through fear and brutality, willing to destroy innocent lives for personal advantage. Jake fought with desperate fury, seeking redemption through courage he'd never shown before, but lacking the skill to match his determination. Donnie moved between them like water, finding its natural course, protecting Jake from Castellanos' superior firepower while preventing the crime boss from harming hostages. Each technique served multiple purposes, deflecting gunfire while maintaining position, neutralizing threats while creating opportunities for others to escape. Jake's wild swing actually connected with Castellano's gun hand, sending the weapon spinning across the platform. But the crime boss responded with professional violence, his knife appearing with practiced ease as he slashed at Jake's exposed ribs. Donnie intercepted the blade with a Wing Chun Pak Sao, trapping Castellano's wrist, while simultaneously striking pressure points that numbed the criminal's grip. The knife clattered away as Jake collapsed, clutching his side, but still breathing. "You think this changes anything?" Castellano snarled, backing toward his remaining men. "You think stopping me here matters? There are others, bigger organizations, networks you can't even imagine." "Maybe," Donnie replied calmly, his stance balanced and ready. "But right now, there's just you and me." The final confrontation began with Castellano's desperate charge, years of criminal violence meeting decades of disciplined martial arts mastery. The crime boss was skilled and ruthless, but he fought with anger and fear. Donnie fought with the clarity of someone protecting everything he truly valued. The battle ended when Donnie's precise combination left Castellano unconscious but alive. Justice served through control rather than vengeance. Strength demonstrated through restraint rather than destruction. 3 weeks after the warehouse raid, morning sunlight streamed through the windows of Bobby Garrison's coffee shop as he spread newspaper clippings across a corner table. Headlines chronicled the systematic dismantling of Castellano's criminal empire. Federal raids net 47 arrests in multi-state operation. Underground fighting ring exposed. International gambling syndicate broken. Donnie sat across from him, a small bandage still covering the cut above his left eye, reading through legal documents that would formally close multiple cases spanning several years of federal investigation. Castellano's looking at 3 consecutive life sentences, Bobby reported with satisfaction. RICO charges, kidnapping, human trafficking, money laundering. The evidence you helped gather was exactly what federal prosecutors needed. What about his network? Scattered. When the head gets cut off an organization like that, the body thrashes around for a while before dying. Bobby's expression grew more serious. Some associates are trying to fill the power vacuum, but they're operating without Castellano's international connections or financial resources. Jake Brennan entered the coffee shop, moving carefully due to his still healing ribs. 3 weeks of community service and mandatory counseling had begun transforming his appearance. Less gel in his hair, more genuine humility in his bearing. "Mr. Yen," Jake said formally as he approached their table, "thank you for agreeing to meet with me." Donnie gestured to an empty chair. "How are you adjusting?" "It's hard," Jake admitted, settling gingerly into the seat. "Facing what I did, who I became. But the community service at your center has been eye-opening. Teaching basic fitness to seniors, helping with equipment maintenance. It's the first honest work I've done in years." Bobby studied Jake with professional interest. "The federal prosecutors were impressed with your cooperation. Testifying against Castellano's organization took courage. It was the least I could do after nearly getting everyone killed." Jake's voice carried genuine remorse. "I keep thinking about Mrs. Hoffman and the others, how terrified they must have been because of my stupidity." "Mrs. Hoffman asked me to give you something," Donnie said, producing a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. "Courage isn't about never falling down. It's about what you do when you get back up. Keep climbing, young man." Jake's eyes misted as he read the message. "She actually forgives me?" "She believes people can change if they genuinely want to," Donnie replied. "The question is whether you believe it about yourself." Patricia Walsh's voice interrupted their conversation as she entered the coffee shop, her confident stride suggesting someone who discovered inner strength through adversity. "Sorry I'm late. Had a meeting with the new insurance company." She joined their table, spreading architectural plans across the newspapers. The gym's reopening next month with a completely new focus. Community fitness, senior programs, anti-bullying. Workshops. Jake's community service helped inspire some of the programming. The plans showed spaces designed for inclusivity rather than intimidation, areas specifically configured for older adults, veterans programs, and family classes. It turns out, Patricia continued, that surviving a kidnapping gives you clarity about what really matters in business. 6 months later, the Phoenix Community Center's new wing buzzed with activity that would have seemed impossible during Donnie's quiet early days of teaching. The space dedicated to martial arts and self-defense programs had tripled in size, funded by donations that poured in after news coverage of the warehouse incident made Donnie's story public to Mrs. Hoffman, now 74, demonstrated a basic wrist release technique to a mixed-age class that included teenagers, middle-aged professionals, and several other seniors. Her movements carried the confidence of someone who discovered strength she never knew she possessed. Remember, she instructed, it's not about overpowering an attacker. It's about creating opportunity and using their momentum against them. Donnie watched from the doorway, pride evident in his expression as his student became a teacher in her own right. The community center now offered programs that bridged generations, seniors sharing wisdom with younger students, teenagers learning respect for elders, families training together to build trust and communication. Patricia Walsh's renovated gym had become a partner facility, providing professional equipment while maintaining the community focus that had emerged from their shared trauma. Jake Brennan, completing his final weeks of community service, helped coordinate programs between both locations. Class dismissed, Mrs. Hoffman announced. Remember to practice the breathing exercises we covered, and I'll see everyone Thursday for our advanced workshop. As students filed out, Bobby Garrison approached Donnie with a manila folder containing photographs from the community center's dedication ceremony the previous week. Channel 12 wants to do a follow-up story, Bobby reported. Something about how tragedy can transform communities, bring people together around shared values. What did you tell them? That you'll consider it, but only if they focus on the students, rather than the teacher. Bobby's expression grew more serious. There's something else. Federal agents arrested 3 of Castellano's former associates last night. They were planning to rebuild the underground fighting circuit using your reputation as marketing. Donnie nodded, unsurprised. Fame carried responsibilities that couldn't be escaped, only managed with wisdom and purpose. The difference, he said, quietly, is that now I understand the connection between who I was and who I'm becoming. The legendary warrior and the humble teacher aren't opposites. They're both aspects of someone trying to use strength properly. Mrs. Hoffman rejoined them, overhearing the last part of their conversation. You know what I've learned in 74 years? She said with a smile. The strongest people are usually the gentlest, because real strength comes from knowing you don't have to prove anything to anyone. Exactly, Donnie replied, watching through the windows as his students walked into the Phoenix evening, carrying themselves with new confidence and dignity. 1 year after the warehouse incident, Ironwell Fitness hummed with the diverse energy of a community space that welcomed everyone. Donnie arrived for his regular Wednesday workout, nodding to familiar faces that now included people from teenagers to senior citizens, each pursuing their own definition of strength and fitness. The transformation was complete but organic. What had once been an intimidating showcase for physical perfection had evolved into a place where effort mattered more than appearance, where progress was measured in personal growth rather than competitive comparison. That a commotion near the free weights caught his attention. A young man, perhaps 22, with the aggressive swagger of someone desperate to prove his superiority, was loudly criticizing other gym members' techniques. This is pathetic, the newcomer announced to no one in particular. Half these people shouldn't even be here, especially the old folks taking up equipment they can't properly use. The scene felt familiar, history threatening to repeat itself with different players but the same underlying dynamics. Several gym members glanced toward Donnie, clearly expecting him to demonstrate the kind of lesson Jake Brennan had received. Instead, Donnie approached the young man with the same patient curiosity he showed all new students at the community center. First time here, Donnie asked conversationally. Yeah, and probably my last if this is the standard, the young man replied dismissively. I need a real gym, not some senior citizen daycare center. What brings you to fitness training? The question seemed to catch the young man off guard. What do you mean? Everyone has reasons, Donnie explained patiently. Health, appearance, competition, confidence. Understanding your motivation helps determine the best approach. Something in Donnie's tone, genuine interest without judgment, seemed to penetrate the young man's defensive aggression. His posture relaxed slightly as he considered the question. I want to be stronger, I guess. Feel like I matter. Those are good goals, Donnie replied. Would you like some help developing a program that builds both physical and mental strength? For the next 20 minutes, Donnie worked with the newcomer, teaching basic techniques, while drawing out the insecurities and frustrations that had been masquerading as arrogance. The gym's atmosphere gradually shifted as other members observed this masterclass in patience and mentorship. Mrs. Hoffman, finishing her own workout nearby, caught Donnie's eye and smiled knowingly as their session concluded. The young man, who'd introduced himself as Marcus, coincidentally, shook Donnie's hand with genuine respect. Thank you, Marcus said. I've never had anyone take the time to actually teach me instead of just showing off. Everyone deserves proper instruction, Donnie replied. Come back Thursday, and we'll continue working on form and breathing. As Marcus left the gym with noticeably different body language, Patricia Walsh approached with appreciation evident in her expression. That, she said, is exactly the response that would leave someone speechless. Donnie smiled, returning to his workout routine surrounded by a community of friends and students who understood that true strength came from character, compassion, and the willingness to lift others up rather than tear them down. The legendary warrior and the humble teacher had found perfect balance, not through hiding from his identity, but by embracing the responsibility that came with genuine mastery. If you like the story, please watch another story on our channel and subscribe to the channel